The LCS is back. Summer split is just around the corner. And a lot of new, or rather old talent returning to the league. J&T and I get into the discussion. Does the LCS need some new or fresh talent? Summer power rankings, of course, we got to get into those. And also, Parth has been on a tear on Twitter the last, we'll say, week or so. And it seems like he's going to lead up with more spicy takes up until the LCS start. So J&T and I are going to pick our favorite topics that he's chosen, and we are going to go over them, love them or hate them. This is episode 88 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with J&T 250 and Blue Jay. So J&T, do you know, you might know this already, but did you realize this is now 2 years of the Clown Fiesta podcast?
Yeah, I think it was June 5th. We did our first episode.
So a little bit past because we skipped an episode, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is 2 years of this podcast. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Actually unreal how fast that went. And of course, we're fired up for summer, especially me. You know that like I'm a big time split guy more than I am MSI guy. So this is like an extra little boost for me, if you will. I think we should just start right away with the whole LCS fresh talent topic. Lots of players coming back. Obviously, Jensen, Sven, 6A, Ignar. There might be others, but those are the ones that come to mind. Dokla,
Big
true.
Dokes.
Yep. Yeah, Big Dokes. I like Big Dokes though. I like that too. What do you think? Does the LCS need fresh talent?
Well, here's the thing with this discussion, and I think, part of it is correct, because I think there are a lot of cases where we see some players in the LCS sticking around for maybe a little bit too long when they may be sort of past the expiration date. One name that I'll just throw out there, but maybe this is a little bit unfair because he did have a season that was quite good fairly recently, is Wild Turtle. Mm-hmm. He's definitely been a very up and down player in the LCS, like even back since his TSM days, and obviously had a very good season 10 on FlyQuest, but he had some pretty rocky seasons on CLG in season 10, Immortals just this past season. And I think when it comes to looking at, fresh faces in the LCS and trying to bring in new talent, it's more about weeding out the players that have sort of been around very long and are on the decline, as opposed to, I think in this case, you talk about a lot of the players that we just mentioned, Sven, Jensen, Ignar, Stixay. I think these are players who are actually pretty worthy of coming back into the LCS. I'll start with, maybe I'll go to bat for somebody who maybe a lot of people wouldn't really choose to talk about, but Stixay, I thought had a pretty solid, season 11 on Golden Guardians. And when it came to rebuilding this roster after they had made the trade for Licorice at the end of season 11, taking him over from FlyQuest, and then Ablaze Olive, in my opinion, having a really good mid lane out of Golden Guardians, I thought that those three players, Stixay, Licorice, and Ablaze Olive, were going to be like the key pieces for Golden Guardians moving forward. I was actually quite surprised to hear that Stixay wasn't going to continue playing for the team. I was in fact going to join the coaching staff. But to see him come back for Golden Guardians, to me, feels like it's what should have been, like that should have been what happened anyway. And then obviously Jensen, he didn't end up on a team because of the whole TL situation with him potentially moving to AD carry. But everybody knows that Jensen deserves to be in the LCS. He's an LCS level mid laner. He's one of the best mid laners in the LCS and matches up very well internationally. And, similarly with Sven, he was on Cloud9. He wasn't a part of their starting roster this past season due to the whole Korean thing they were going for. But now we'll see him back as a support for the long term. Maybe, who knows? We'll see some AD carry in the short term. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it just feels like all these players who are coming back to the LCS for this split specifically, in my opinion, like they're all worthy players who deserve that second shot. And I fully welcome them back, and I hope they do well. Like players like 6A, players like Dokla, who maybe didn't have the greatest go around the first time, but have like brought themselves back up and picked themselves back up, and like they're going to be in good positions to play well this year.
Yeah, I really think it's not as simple of a discussion as people would like it to be. Because I'm going to use an example where I'm going to go to EG, right? Let's say they keep Jizuke and JoJo doesn't play. No one is saying, oh, like, why are you keeping Jizuke? He had a great split, right? But you let go of Jizuke, it opens the door for JoJo to come in, and you're like, holy shit, this fresh talent is freaking awesome. And so I don't think the other thing, too, is that, like, a lot of people will point to the JoJos and the Dannys and be like, yes, see, this is why we need new NA talent. And I completely agree that we do to a certain extent. But for every Danny, for every JoJo, you get your Niles, your Palafox, your I mean, I guess I could even like there's some players that I guess that have stuck around, like contracts, for example. Like there are some players that I do think, some new players that aren't exactly all that hype, and then some older players that do need to go. And so like when I look at what the answer is to this question, it very much is on the fence, and I hate to have to do that, but I think it's a really complicated answer to whether the LCS needs new talent.
I mean, it kind of feels like a case by case sort of process where, you want to
It
talk about a
is.
player and it's, well, first of all, have they been on a good team? And then it's about, have their, even if they've been on a bad team, have their performances been good enough to warrant them, having a spot on a team in a coming split? So it's pretty hard to judge as like this one overarching question to just say yes or no to, because I definitely think it's, sort of case dependent. But me personally, for the most part, I think that the LCS doesn't need fresh talent, but it does. It seems to operate well with the fresh talent, because I think the LCS, for the most part, does a pretty good job of creating storylines around some of these players. Like before JoJo, started playing super well in the spring split, and had a great playoffs run and good performances at MSI. Like he was a very interesting player, and a player whom you wanted to get invested in and you wanted to follow, despite his the unknown of what he was at the start of spring split. And now obviously there's a huge fan base for players like JoJo and players like Denny. But that first, those first couple splits where they're coming into the league as fairly green players and kind of working their way up the ladder, it's actually very interesting, and makes for a compelling split and compelling storylines during the split.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it comes down to just what you were saying. Like it is a player by player basis that you need to judge these things on, and it is. I'm gonna make it as simple as it should be. It's just, is the player still good enough to play? And I think a lot of the times when people talk about this discussion, they forget that along the way, and they get way too focused on, oh, we need new players, or no, we need to keep these players because it's the faces that people love. Like, could you imagine, for example, like Sneaky, for example, hasn't played in a long time. There's a good chance that that's a washed player now. Now, we don't know that, but there's a good chance, right, after not having played for a couple of years now. But if he came back, people would love to watch him play, right? So there's a balance there of like, Sneaky might not even be good enough to play in the league anymore. Who the hell knows? But people would absolutely love to see him. And I realize that's kind of apples and oranges when comparing him to like Stixay, for example. But it really is basis by basis of like which players should be playing in the league, and which shouldn't. And the
Yeah,
other thing that I'll say too is like familiarity, like with the Sneaky example, familiarity does matter. Like I'm fired up to see Sven and Jensen come back. These are like some of the top players we've had in the league. How can you not be excited to see these guys that have obviously run the league since they've been in it?
yeah. I mean, I'll use to positively use an example of an older face who came back to the league and now I think is playing really well. Biofrost, kind of a person that I think the both of us sort of wrote off a little bit coming
Yes.
into this
Yeah.
season because he didn't look very good after he initially left TSM, joined CLG, and then even on his return to TSM. I think both of us sort of were with the idea that TSM's bot lane was their biggest problem, and
Yeah, it was bad in
and the
my
strength of their
opinion.
top
Yeah.
side was the main reason why that team was super successful. So Biofrost coming back into the LCS on Dignitas, I think a lot of people, I wouldn't really call it a head scratching move, but we're like, is this guy actually going to be able to perform at, the LCS level that he was formerly doing on the TSM type level, not the sort of CLG Biofrost that we saw? And, I think the both of us definitely recognize Biofrost had a really good year, and, there's nothing to indicate that it's going to be any different this time around.
Yeah, I'll continue to say it. I know that a lot of people disagree and they think Core JJ was the number one support this last split. I'm going to keep saying it. It was Biofrost. I thought he had a really, really good split. And I was pleasantly surprised because, like you said, there's a lot of people doubting. I was one of those people. I really did not expect Biofrost to come back and be such a monster. He had a great split. I'm hoping he can carry that over into summer. But I mean, time will tell. But yeah, that's a perfect example of a guy that I think a lot of people would write off, and then, well, what do you know? He comes back and he's a monster.
Yeah.
So, anyways, with that, we should probably get into the LCS since that's starting up very shortly. Let's get into our power rankings.
The meat and potatoes right here.
How do we want to do this? Do we want to go 1 to 10 or 10 to 1?
Well,
And I guess we have to go off of one of our lists because I don't know what your list looks like, right? So and you'll have to vocalize that for me and the listeners because I can't
Yeah,
see since we're not streaming it live. But
I'll pull them up
whichever way
right
you want to do
now,
it.
but I will read them out. So I'll start with myself. My list, I'll
Okay.
go through just for reading purposes. I'll go 1 to 10. I
Okay.
have TL1, followed by EG, 100 Thieves, C9, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, FlyQuest, TSM, CLG, then Immortals. Blue Jay, from 1 to 10, has TL, 100 Thieves, EG, Cloud9, Golden Guardians, Dignitas, TSM, FlyQuest, CLG, Immortals. So the big changes, well, I mean, there's not a lot of big changes, but the notable ones are you had EG3, 100 Thieves 2. I had the inverse. I had EG2, 100 Thieves 3. And then you had Golden Guardians 5, Dig 6. I have Dig 5, Golden Guardians 6. And then we had TSM and FlyQuest also swapped at 7 and 8.
Yeah. So again, you're the one running show here. How are we doing this? Which team do you want to start with?
I think we should start with the obvious, which is at the bottom, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start bottom and go to top then.
We'll kick off Immortals at number 10. We both had them number 10, to be honest. I don't think it's any surprise that they are number 10, while they were tied with TSM in record at the end of the spring split. TSM had the 2-0 head-to-head, so they were effectively the last place team. We're 4 and 14, and the only moves that they made, like I shouldn't say the only moves, because they made some moves on their roster, but they dropped Xerxes to add Kenvi, a rookie jungler, and then their bot lane is now Lost Ignar instead of Wild Turtle / Arrow plus Destiny.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see Ignar. I admit, like, I'm a big Ignar fan. I've always said that I think the way he specializes with champions like Rakan, he's a guy that finds a lot of flanks and finds the engage in team fights. That's his strength. Pretty much my worry with him is similar to what it's going to be with Jensen and Sven and all the players that are coming back. But when you take a split off, you don't exactly know what you're going to get when they come back. And so there's a question mark there, but that's not my biggest issue. My biggest issue is Lost. I did not think he had a very good split on Golden Guardians. And so sure, Wild Turtle and Arrow did not have great splits themselves, but I don't really think that you're solving much with Lost. Now, maybe there's an argument to be made that Lost just didn't fit well with Golden Guardians, and he'll be a better fit with this team for X, Y, and Z. He did play with PoE already, but I'm not sold on that. I do think Lost was the biggest issue for Golden Guardians, and that going to a now worse team that's kind of a big worry for me, big caution sign.
Yeah, when Lost initially moved from Golden Guardians after he was released by TSM, I was actually, I think, one of the few people who, was a little bit higher on Lost than most people. And yeah, going into spring, I was hopeful for him on Golden Guardians, but he definitely didn't perform very well. And coming on to the last place team, while I do think that Ignar is a big upgrade at support for the team, relative to Destiny, I think jungle it's a weird little spot because for the most part, when Xerxes has been on this team, he's been the best player on this team. However, he had a really bad spring split.
Yeah, he didn't have a good split, yeah.
So I think, when you just think about these last 6 months of what we've seen from Xerxes, obviously, Kenvi coming into the team, I think will give fans a little bit more excitement because this has been a very hyped up prospect for pretty much the last 2 years. Talking about how this is going to be like one of the next best junglers in the LCS. However, when you really think about this a little bit more, like Xerxes was, a top 6, top 5 jungler in the league for the most part when he was in the LCS. And now, he's leaving and you're bringing in a rookie who hasn't really, he's been a hyped up prospect, but hasn't really been that top guy in the academy scene. Relative to a few other players who we've seen, be successful on the number 1 academy team and obviously look like the best players. So I think jungle is maybe like a side grade at best because I'm not expecting Kenvi to just come in and stomp the league. I understand that, he's probably a player that's going to take a little bit of time to sort of get acclimated to the LCS. But at the same time, when you're a rookie joining the last place team, your path to victory is going to be fairly difficult.
Yeah, my problem isn't so much with Kenvi because as I like to continue to remind people, I don't watch Academy. I don't know, I didn't watch any of the games. I have no idea. My biggest problem is that this guy's coming into a league with really, really good junglers. Is this one of the worst times to be a rookie jungler? How many good junglers are there in this league? This is probably the strongest jungle that we've had in, I don't even know, a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Is it just me?
I think so. Even
when
some
you
of
have
the
to go
academy
up against
junglers are quite good.
when you have to go up against Santorin, Blabber, Closer, Spica, Inspired. I thought Pride Stalker was good. I still think he's
River,
underrated. Jose
Jose
Dioto,
Dioto.
River. Like I've named 8 junglers that are like good players, man. That's one of the issues that I have for Kenvi, and it's not anything personal to him. It's that this is a rough time to be joining the league as a jungler, and so I'm a little bit nervous for that. The other thing too is that I have to admit PoE did not have the greatest split either. And look, it always comes back to it's hard to look good on a bad team, but usually all of their players are somewhat responsible for that team being bad, right? Usually. And then the other thing is too is Revenge. I've kind of lost faith. I would say that he was good in maybe 1 of 4 games, like just way too inconsistent. His good. Maybe I'm being generous with the 1 and 4. We did see some good performances, but we just saw a lot of bad ones on top of that, and so I can't really ignore that. And I don't really think Revenge has, we'll say, blossomed into the player that we would like to see. And I guess going back to the Kenvi thing, this kind of fits with our first topic. Like it's exciting because it's a new player, and we're all in the back of our heads hoping that it's a Danny, it's a Jojo Pyun. But again, it could be a insert any struggling rookie here. There's been so many of them. Iconic if you want to go to the jungle, for example. So yeah, it's just a lot of unknown when it comes to Kenvi.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to sort of figure out what this team is going to look like. You know, we obviously know that Power of Evil is a very unique mid laner, and when you're, regardless of, you know, your position or whatever, when you're playing on a team and you have a very unique play style, it's kind of on the rest of the team to either conform to that play style and play with it and play around it, or you kind of have to win in spite of that. So, you know, who knows? Like maybe, you know, Power of Evil style it actually ends up being favorable to the new meta, and you know maybe that works in Immortal's favor because you know control mages might be a really popular choice in the mid lane, and therefore you know that maybe that puts Kenvi on, you know, some more early game utility type stuff. And you know, like we're not academy watchers, so to be honest I don't even know if Kenvi's like the super aggressive like micro epic jungler or if he's just like big brain macro guy. So I think it'll just be interesting to see how the meta plays out for this team, because in a world where the meta doesn't really suit Power of Evil's strengths, it feels like this team is going to struggle a lot, because I don't really see where the carry potential comes from, if not him, because I don't really have any faith in Revenge. Envy's a rookie, and you know I don't really put any of the weight on him, and Lost was a little bit disappointing for me in Spring Split. Yeah. So I guess we need some FlyQuest 2020 magic here with Power of Evil and Ignar to, I think, make this team decent at all.
Last thing I want to say on them before we move on is I think there's a rumor. I don't know if there's a rumor. Actually, I think PoE tweeted out, isn't he having like visa issues or something?
Yeah, he said he could be delayed. May or may not be here for the start.
Yeah, and that's I guess going to be a common theme, since we'll talk about that a little bit later with Cloud9 as well. But it seems like there's still lots of players, as every split, that are having visa issues, and so that's something else that could lead into problems, is that he's probably not scrimming with his team right now. That's not very good either.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say this now. I didn't really take that sort of factor into consideration when making my power rankings, so even though there's a potential,
you're gonna push them down to 11th?
No, but what I'm saying is, if maybe we had already heard, you know, if it was confirmed that PoE was going to be here during week 1, or if you know it was known that he wasn't going to be here until week 3 or 4 or something, that wouldn't have changed my picks. So once we talk about a couple of other, you know, situations for teams later on, just I'll put that out there to begin.
Okay. All right. CLG was 9 for both of ours?
Yep, we both had CLG 9.
I feel like you need to start with this one, because you were the big CLG stan last play. And by the way, are we still CLG stan going into summer?
I would say I was a Luger and Poom stan more than...
I thought you were CLG stan.
Dude, I don't...
No, come on, you were CLG stan. Come on.
Yeah, but Palafox and Jenkins were kind of trash. Don't give up on them.
It's the CFP curse. You got to go a full year.
Hey, I can do whatever I want. I'm gonna root for Luger and Poom. You know, I like what they were doing, but you know, for me with CLG, they did make one change in the offseason, replacing Jenkins with Dokla. You know, it's not like the team got rid of any of the players; they literally just swapped Academy and LCS starting spots. So, if we see CLG struggling, I assume that Jenkins coming back into the team is not really out of the realm of possibilities. And if you were to ask me, I would have replaced Palafox before I replaced Jenkins in the top lane, because For me, Palafox along with Contracts are probably the two worst players on this team. And towards the beginning of the split, Contracts was really giving. He was really trying to claim the title of the worst player in the LCS with all the inting he was doing. So it just feels like a little bit. CLG just feels weird to me because if I was gonna make a change, I would have made a different change than what they did. But I think Dokla coming in over Jenkins is it has potential. As Dokla's kind of been a player that a lot of people have been talking about because he was number one in Champions Queue, and he's been on some pretty good academy teams ever since he left the LCS after Optic, and I don't know if he even played in Season 9, so maybe it was at the end of Season 8 or Season 9, but he was on TSM Academy and actually performed pretty decently there, and obviously was on CLG Academy, who was, were they a good academy
They were
team?
first, I think.
Yeah, they were
I think they were
first,
first.
and he was, the best player in Champions Queue. The stats, what the stats said at least.
And those things matter, like they do, but for me, I can never like I've kind of given up on he was good in academy, so he'll be good in LCS, right? Same thing when it
Yeah.
comes to like Kenvi. Like I can't accept that anymore. I've just seen it fail too many times. I think you could look at the mid lane, for example, and that's like I don't think Palafox has panned out. And to be honest, I agree that I would have looked to replace. Now, let's be fair, you don't always have the options to replace, right? So maybe they did try to replace Contracts or Palafox and they didn't find anybody better, or maybe they think there's just a couple of things that went wrong that are fixable for the split coming up. My point being is that while I'm excited to see Big Dokes play and I'm happy that he's back, I'm not going to be like, oh, he was great in Academy. That means he'll be great in LCS. It's just not that simple. And I've kind of been fooled by Academy hype one too many times, I think, for me to just hop on board. Do I think the team will be better than they were when they just had Jenkins? Yeah. I'm just not convinced that it's enough to really push them much higher. Jenkins was, if I'm honest, kind of AFK player, didn't really do much. And so maybe Dokla is someone that has a more of an aggressive style and maybe looks to make more happen. That's what I would hope for out of CLG because it felt like a lot of the time it was Palafox and Contracts trying to force plays, and those plays looked really bad when they were trying to force them. And maybe that's because they didn't have the whole team that was able to make plays. I don't know. I'm kind of hypothesizing here, but definitely need to see something change. And so I'm glad that they made a change, even if it's not the craziest.
Yeah, I mean, what it feels like for me is, with CLG, like in theory, off-season changes should be upgrades, regardless of whatever team you are, because, when you're making these changes, you're doing it with the sense that, hey, this is going to make our team better. And in the case where every single, you can just, we'll use the hypothetical that every single offseason change that every team made was an improvement to their roster, CLG's improvement just doesn't feel as big as some of these other teams potentially. So it feels like the ceiling for CLG didn't really increase that much with the one change that they did make.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, I have FlyQuest 8, but you have TSM 8. Who are we doing first?
Yeah, we can do FlyQuest. My main thing with FlyQuest is I actually think that, the team overall is pretty good. Just unfortunately, Kumo is just dragging the rest of them down.
So
If
I'm not as cold on Kumo as you are. Because I do think there were, like, I thought there was some games where Kumo actually had really, really good games. Sort of like what I said with Revenge, whereas, like, Revenge would be, like, 1-4, 1-5. I feel like Kumo was 1-2, 1-3. And the other ones, like, they were bad performances. I don't want to make it sound like he was an average player, because I do think that he held them back. I just don't think it was nearly that bad. When I look at the other four players, I thought got progressively worse. I guess not the other four. Jose Dioto, I think, was the most consistent and had a great split. But I thought Tukui, Johnson, and Afro actually all got worse as the split went on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna dispute that or disagree with that. I'm just not a big Kumo believer here. So I do feel like that this roster is in a little bit of a Dignitas situation where, I think 4 out of the 5 players on their team are actually pretty good, and they can be a top half team in the league, but they unfortunately have one glaring hole, which I think will just get punished, against all of the top teams, and has the potential to struggle against some of the weaker teams even.
Yeah. The main problems that I remember thinking stood out quite a bit when watching Spring Split, as the split went on, was Tukui was dying way too much in the mid lane. He was absolutely popping off, playing really aggressive at the start of the split, and I think teams kind of learned like, oh, this guy's gonna keep trading really aggressively and not really respect ganks. And then there would be games where he's dying 2 or 3 times just in laning phase alone. You can't have that happen. Afromu was like king clutch for like the first half of the split and for the last like year or two, whereas like he is finding the engage for so many fights, and he's getting that first pick to turn the 5v5 fight into a 5v4 in their favor before it really breaks out. That we didn't see. We saw missed execution on a lot of his engages. Johnson, they would feed so many resources, and he really wouldn't do much with it. Again, this was all as the split went on, and that's stuff where it's like, I really worry when I see a team start off really well and slowly fall off as the split goes on. So that's where I'm worried for FlyQuest. When I look at the players individually, there's a lot of good there, but it's like, I don't know, as a team, they just slowly fell off, and it was like, next thing you know, I've lost faith, and I guess now I have them 8th on my list.
Yeah, I definitely think that the team sort of did sort of hit a bit of a slow decline as the season went on. However, I still don't think that, really disputes the fact that there was a lot of games during the season where the game states were relatively even, when looking at pretty much everywhere but top side, because top lane, especially last year in the LCS, was a very volatile role in terms of players just getting rolled. We saw Summit, Bwipo, Someday just straight up bullying players in lane, where we would see them get up 2 to 3 kills like pre 15 minutes. They would get like towers, like solo before plates expired, and you would see top laners with 2 items at like 15-20 minutes into the game because of all the resources that they're getting, pretty much just solo by themselves, pretty much abusing these weaker players. So
heavy, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It was like you had the really, really good top laners and the really, really bad ones, and that led to so many mismatches in gold differentials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't have the faith that Kumo is going to survive, because I still think that top lane will be a very strong role in the LCS. I think some of the marquee games were definitely the games against Cloud9, where Summit was literally just rolling them 1v5. And I think of that Jace game against FlyQuest, where they had those like 2 really weird drafts where FlyQuest had Zillion and Cloud9 was playing this like full dive comp with Jace, and Summit like was basically 1v9ing the entire game. So I just think those situations for FlyQuest are still going to be apparent, and they're just unfortunately going to be in a position where they could be like a 10-8 team, a 9-9 team, but there might be 2 or 3 of those games during the whole season where Kumo just gets smacked and the game gets exploded through topside.
Yeah, I guess I'm coming to the realization now that it's like, even though, like I said, that I'm not as cold on Kumo as you are, and I think the reason is that I do think he was better this split than we've seen him in the past, because I do think he was like bottom tier for his other splits. I think we saw him on EG. I don't remember where else we saw him. Did we see him on Cloud9 at all? I don't even know if we did.
He played a couple games for Cloud9.
Anyways, yeah, we saw him like really struggle in the past, and so it's like I think he got better. But again, when it comes to the top, like it being so top heavy and then bottom heavy, like there's too much of a gap for him to reach the level of other top laners in the league, like Someday, for example, like Bwipo, even though Bwipo didn't have that great of a second half, or Summit. Like there was really big gaps, and maybe that's why I don't have a lot of faith in FlyQuest, because even if Kumo did get better in my eyes, it's like there's a long way to go to catch up to some of these top laners.
Mm-hmm.
TSM, okay, there's going to be a lot of eyes on TSM this split. Let me talk. I mean, there's always, right? But I think most eyes are going to be on Maple. That's the one change. I guess maybe support. There's like they're supposed to be like fighting for their spot or whatever. Do you know what the latest is on that?
Well, Shenyi's the starter, but they signed Mia guy with the intention that he was, going to be able to compete for the starting spot. So who knows?
I was under the impression that they were still fighting for the spot, but I didn't really know if that was true or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a situation where they probably told, both players that, hey, Shenyi's a starter, but we're going to play both of them. I mean, that's what the gist kind of sounded like when we heard about the signing. So it to me though with TSM is I'll kind of see it till I believe it, because TSM was really bad last year. Like they didn't really
last split. You mean we're talking?
Yeah, sorry, last split. And I don't really think they improved a whole lot per se. Because if you look at their wins, they had 4 wins, the entire split. 2 of them were against Immortals, which was the clear worst team in the league. One was against Golden Guardians, who, we kind of admitted can sort of beat anybody and lose to anybody and was having a lot of problems closing out games in the spring split. And then they beat Cloud9 when Cloud9 was kind of like falling face first towards the end of the split. I was like when Summit just kind of started to run it down in these games. So I don't really put a whole lot of stock in a lot of the TSM wins, and I don't think that they really made any massive improvements throughout the split. However, I will admit that Maple is a definite upgrade over Kaido/Takeover. But at that same time, I don't think that Maple is this player who is just going to completely, shake up this team and shake up the league in terms of individual impact. Obviously, he was very good on PSG Talon, and he worked very, very well on that team. But one of the problems that people have always talked about with Maple was his time over in the LPL was pretty terrible for the most part. I pulled up his placements at the end of each split when he was in the LPL. So this is from Season 9 onwards, after he left Flash Wolves, excluding Season 11 when he was on PSG Talon. But he was, and keep in mind the LPL has 17 teams, he was 10th, 8th, 16th, 13th, 13th, and 13th. So that's not, I like I said, I think we can recognize that Maple's a pretty good player and obviously can perform on the international stage, but he's not this big game changer that I think is going to come into the league and sort of contend for top mid laner in the league when we still have players like Jensen, like Bjergsen, who are going to be, playing. So I don't really see, I see Maple as kind of like a mid-tier mid laner who is going to come in and make this team better, but I don't think that this team is going to just suddenly make this big change that, propels them into the top 5, top 4, at least not right away. Like, I feel like this is going to be a team that if they do play well, it's going to be one of the classic TSM ramp up at the end of the split where they maybe go on some big win streak towards the end.
So I lost you for just a little bit. I heard you naming off was it the places that they finished or like his team finished? What was it exactly? I didn't catch that, sorry.
10th, 8th, 16th, 13th, 13th, and 13th.
In what though? In which league? Like which teams were these?
It was on Suning, LNG, and the team that he was just on for this spring split.
So, okay, so all LPL teams. The reason why I think it's relevant, and I'm going to steal something from what Parth brought up tonight on Hotline League, because I think it's a really good point, is he made, I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but he asked the rhetorical question of, like, has North America ever been able to compete with our mid laners at Worlds? And the answer is obviously, well, no, not really. And his point being is like, do you think that a player needs to be successful in the LPL to be able to have success in the LCS? And I'm like, okay, I see what he's getting at here. That's a very good point. And I do think that regardless, we saw him perform really, really well when he was playing for PSG. And I also think that he can be a really good mid laner because I mean I talked up our jungle pool, but I think most people are also in agreement that our mid lane pool isn't as strong as it once was before, and that there is room for a mid laner to come in and look a lot better than he would have in the LPL. And so I do think that there is a pretty good upgrade there. The other thing, too, is that I also thought TSM started to look better at the end of the split as well, but when a team only has 5 wins in a regular split, I still can't get that excited about them. So if they won a few more games towards the end of the split, I would bump them a little higher, but I'm just not ready to do that yet. But I don't feel very confident in my 7th place here. I really don't. But again, I need to see more before I push them up, because the teams that I have ahead of them with Dignitas and Golden Guardians, I do see where they would have fixed their problems, for example. And so that's why I still have them in 7. Tactical did not have a great split. Spica did not have a great split. And apparently this, J&T knows I'm about to get rattled here. Apparently there's some really bad stuff that went on at TSM. I mean, to me, I heard that. I was like, for one, what else is new? But 2, stop bringing that shit up if you can't tell us what it is. So, Mark, Travis, and Parth, all on Hotline League tonight, seem to know something crazy happened. But fuck us, right? Like, and I'm not even mad at them for not telling us, because sometimes you have to keep that. But I just wish they wouldn't bring that stuff up if we're not allowed to know. And I've heard Mark say this on Hotline League so many times. It's like, it sucks to know things that go on behind the scenes, and we can't tell the fans. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. So stop telling us that this shit exists if you can't tell us about it. But anyways, all this to say that it sounds like there were definitely some things going on that may have held back the team more than just not being able to perform. It sounds like there were other things. What those things are, we're left to fucking speculate because this is the LCS. What else is new? But that's another thing that I think we have to consider when we're doing power rankings is like, well, look, I have them 7, but apparently there was some really bad shit that happened, and apparently that shouldn't happen again this summer. Who the hell knows?
The thing that's weird about that is why is it the case that they don't like nobody knows or it's not like public information? Because it feels like with traditional sports all the time, like right when a player or a team gets in trouble, whether it's like on or off, the field, the court, the rink, whatever. Like if there's players who are in like legal trouble or whatever, PEDs, like it's always like people know right away because there's people reporting on it and the media gets super invested in it. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, why is it the case in esports when there's all this juicy behind the scenes shit going on that it's just like kept in your back pocket for nobody to know until 4 years down the line when some retired player on stream is talking about this shit?
So I know that you don't watch Hotline League that often. I know you watch a little bit. So but it sounds like you're just echoing what Mark is saying, but I know that you probably haven't heard him say that. But what you just said is what Mark says all the time, that like if this was an NFL team or an NBA team, everyone would know what it is. And I know that you're not purposefully echoing what he's saying because you probably didn't even know that he said it. But you're exactly on the same page as Mark. You are. The reason that I have to figure for why this stuff is I would have to guess that because there's so much like independent journalism where like they're really fucking nosy and there's so many of them with those big leagues that like there's just more leaks for that reason. There's more people digging, you know what I'm saying? Whereas like I don't think there's that many people digging, and maybe they're not as good as digging for that information in esports. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that would be my guess as to why we see it come out in sports all the time is because there are hundreds and I guess millions of people that are following an NFL player where there's like, thousands that are following an LCS player. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that does make a little bit of sense in terms of what you said. Like, there's not a lot of people in the esports, seeing digging. I guess maybe the other reason is that, since these journalists and these teams, it seems to be a very small inner circle, and kind of releasing this sort of information would sort of break the trust between those two parties. I would think because in the NFL or the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, whatever, you kind of expect the dirty laundry to be aired out whenever, it's brought up. I mean, I'll use an example. Sorry, people don't know, but like the Deshaun Watson in the NFL, when it kind of came about that he was this big lawsuit that's being filed against this NFL player, Deshaun Watson, for sexual assault / misconduct with a bunch of I think it's up to now 25 women. That was something that when it was found out instantly came out and everybody knew, and that was like the talk of the town. And that's the expectation when it comes to stories about players, teams, whatever. The other thing to go back on, I'll use another NFL example. Sorry if you don't know what this is, my apologies. But the Washington football team with the whole John Gruden email chains that were happening from like back in the day in 2010, where he was like making racist and homophobic remarks in his work email to other players on the team, other people within the team and organization. So it's just kind of surprising that we don't know about these things, because if it's supposed to be this whole big bad thing that's gone on, it's just surprising that people aren't talking about it.
I'm still stuck on the 25 women thing. I heard about it. I didn't know 25 women?
Yeah, I mean, we could go down the whole rabbit hole about this. But...
I know we're supposed to be doing power rankings for TSM here, but what?
Yeah, is
he still playing?
Well, he
I follow football. Isn't he signed with the
he just
Browns?
Yeah, but he might get suspended for.
Well, is it because of 25?
Well,
women
yeah.
Forward? Hello?
People are assuming he's going to get suspended, so.
Oh, dude. Okay. Anyways, so I guess went on quite a bit of a tangent there, but apparently there's some shit going on with TSM. Hopefully that eventually comes out. It feels like there's always shit going on with TSM. It just sounds like there's more. And well, maybe we'll never know about it, and people will wonder why people continue to not tune into the LCS, and will go on with life as usual. Okay, Dignitas. Or wait, is it Dignitas or is it Golden Guardians?
Well, we'll do dig because you said it. You had them
Okay.
6. I had them 5.
The story that we had with this team, J&T, was they have one guy that is clearly the problem. No offense to Fake God, but the other four were all performing really well. I would even say all of them in the top 5 of their role, all in the better half of the players. Agree or disagree with that sentiment?
Yes, I would say that Dignitas was the more extreme FlyQuest, where Fake God was a bigger problem than Kumo was, and the other 4 were performing better than, in comparison to the FlyQuest 4 players. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the more extreme version where, wow, this team actually individually is, pretty good, and as a team they're actually pretty good, but this one guy is just so bad that he's really holding them back.
And I can't speak to how good Gamsu has been in Academy because again, I don't watch it. I don't really care about Academy that much, if I'm being completely honest. But you changed the guy that you needed to change, and so that gives me a little bit of faith. Which I mean, I still have them only 6th, right? That's not exactly some crazy, power ranking. But I feel like if you do switch out the one problem that you really had, and even if that problem stuck around, I could still see them finishing 6th. So I don't think I'm getting too overhyped on Dignitas by throwing them in the 6th spot when their jungle, mid, AD, and support all looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, I've been a little bit of a Gamsu believer. When 100 Thieves signed him, I was like, oh my god. I've talked about this before, but I thought he was going to get the fast track back to LCS when Someday was underperforming. But
It seems like 100 Thieves has too many top laners to,
yeah, maybe, dude. Maybe they're the top lane whisperers now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm a bit of a believer in Gamsu. People forget, like, he was a good player when he was in the
Yeah.
LCS. He was on Dignitas before when they were a top 4 team in the league in summer of season 5. They almost went to
And
Worlds that
going
year.
And going back to our first topic of like old faces coming back, this is one of the very unique and very interesting situations to see an old face come back, right?
Yeah.
Because it's been so long and because he went and played freaking Overwatch, like he went and played another esport competitively. So I think that makes it like super interesting. And like I think I mean, I said with TSM, people are going to have their eyes glued on Maple because that's the change. This is the same thing with Dignitas, but even more so because it's like, let's see what this experiment looks like, because it's something that doesn't really happen all that often.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of merit to say that even though he wasn't playing League for about a 4-year period, he was still playing another game at the highest level competitively. So it feels like there's a little bit more stock in that than just a player who stopped playing League and wasn't playing professionally at all. Even though it's a
Yeah,
different
it's not
game, and
so much.
the games are different. Like Overwatch is not the same to League whatsoever. But there is something to say for continuing to be in that competitive environment, in that team
Yes.
environment, working with other players, working with staff, and it feels like that part of the transition is going to be pretty seamless for the most part, and it kind of will be dependent on his performance. And if his previous performances are to go on anything, he should be pretty decent. We did
Yeah.
talk about how top heavy the top lane is right now with players like Whippo, Impact, Someday, potentially Fudge coming back into the mix. But if you were to match up Gamsu with your Kumos, your Revenged, your Dokla / Jenkins, your Huni, like I'll take him like more than half the time.
Interesting, interesting. And yeah, I just want to go back to your point about him playing in another league. The thing that you do get is you do keep that competitive work ethic where you have to keep grinding, and that's just a discipline thing as
Sigma
well that I
grind
think
set, dude.
that's something that can definitely carry over from esport to esport, even if the actual skills may not. And we'll have to wait and see just how much he's been able to regain his skills. Next up, I had Golden Guardians 5 on my list. You had Golden Guardians 6 on yours, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start with this one?
I don't know. It felt pretty easy to rank Golden Guardians because it
Hmm.
feels like their ceiling isn't that high, but their floor is also, their floor is not too low. The only change that they did make was changing out Lost for Stixate, and to me, it feels like that is just going to make this team a little bit more consistent because Lost, even on his days on TSM, did kind of feel like this feast or famine player where he kind of just played what was meta. And when it was scaling 80 carries, he played scaling 80 carries. And, traditionally that's, you're going to be weak early, but deal big damage late. And it was always kind of very dependent on the team, to where if the team was underperforming, then Lost is underperforming because he's just a role player. And, I think Stixay is almost the exact same in terms of him being a role player, but him being a little bit more of a veteran and his sort of track record in the LCS kind of gives me more faith in him. And previously, why I said that I thought that he was going to be on the team in the first place to start season 12. And like I said, though, the main reason why I don't have them 5 or don't have them in these higher slots is I still don't think their ceiling is that high. We did see them have very successful early games in the spring split, and they were kind of inconsistent. They never really found that, solution of being able to grow their leads consistently. They did take some, games off of prominent teams like 100 Thieves, like Team Liquid. So I think that they're not going to be a boring team per se, but I just think that they're still in that category of we can beat anybody, but we can also lose to anybody, which is why they seem to struggle against teams like TSM in the spring slip when TSM was just so bad.
Yeah, so I know you just said it, but I'm going to say it again. The thing that we focused on so much in spring was they get leads, they throw them. Now, a big part of that, I don't want to throw this all on Lost, because I do need to remind people that occasionally they would put Licorice on a carry. That guy can't, I don't trust him on carries. I don't, he's very much a just blind pick him Gnar, let him slowly lose the lane, but he'll be okay. He's not going to absolutely cost you the game. But when they put him on like that Kennen, I can't forget that Kennen game, he can't flank worth shit, and you really need to know how to flank if you're playing Kennen. So I don't think that I'm not too excited about Licorice in particular. I am very excited about Pride Stalker. I still think he was really, really good. I think one of the reasons he didn't stand out so much is because there were so many other good junglers as well. But I thought he was great. And another guy that I thought struggled a little bit was Olive, because
Yeah,
Olive,
he was kind of bad.
I will remind people, was the king. I'll keep calling him the king of burning his flash for no reason or burning his stopwatch for no reason, which those things matter a lot when it comes to team fight, which is inevitably where Golden Guardians would end up throwing their leads, is in those team fights. And a lot of times it was because Olive would just die, like, oh, he didn't have that stopwatch that he wasted randomly earlier. So there are other areas to look at that are not Lost. But to me, Lost was still the biggest one. You consistently had an 80 carry that when team fights came around was not putting out any freaking damage. That's a problem. And so that's why I'm actually pretty happy with this change back to Stixay. Even if Stixay is long past his best days in the LCS, I expect to see something more than what we saw with Lost in spring. They really, really needed an 80 carry, and it felt like they didn't have one. So that's why I'm a little bit happier with Golden Guardians, and that's why I have them in the top half myself at number 5. But I do definitely think that, you know how we normally talk about top 5 versus bottom 5 in this league? I think we've gotten to a point where it's top 4 and then the rest, because I do think there is a gap between TL100, EGC9, and the rest of the teams. Whereas a lot of times it's top 5 and bottom 5. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah,
or not this split, I should say.
Yeah, and I would say in the case of Golden Guardians, to sort of compete in that top 4, or to be one of those teams that's going to try to punch their way up and compete with those other teams, you either have to have great team play or very strong individual players. And I don't think that Golden Guardians really has either of those things down. That was kind of why I more had them as 6th than 5. Is just, if you were to compare them to Dignitas, I would say that I would rather have Dignitas' individual players, but maybe you could say that Golden Guardians overall was a better team because, they took some pretty important wins. But it just feels like when you are going to be competing against the likes of Cloud9, 100 Thieves, EG, and TL, just looking at their rosters, like, you either have to be a really good team or have those same individual skill players to be able to match up to that. And I just don't think that Golden Guardians really has the firepower to do so. For them to sort of make a lot of improvements, we would really have to see Ablaze, Olive, and Licorice kind of go back to what we saw at the end of Season 11, where once Golden Guardians acquired Licorice in a trade with FlyQuest, he actually started playing really well. And Ablaze Olive, in my opinion, had a really good year in Season 11, specifically in Summer Split, because it felt like the players whom we all expected to make Golden Guardians, transition from Season 11 to Season 12, and Licorice and Ablaze Olive were the guys who struggled, and the guys who they brought in that people really didn't, were just like, whatever, Ole and Pride Stalker were actually the better performing players on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to add. Actually, I do have something to add, but I'm going to save it. I'm gonna save it for
you just
we'll
you just did what you were all mad about before, like, no, they know.
I will say it though. There's a difference, Bucko.
Yeah, but now you're baiting me because I want to know what it is.
Well, tune in 15, 20 minutes later. Okay, let's go. Who's next on the list?
We both had C9 at a 4. I don't think that C9 being at 4 is like should be surprising to anybody. They were the fourth place team, but I think a lot of people might think that, with the big additions of Jensen coming back to play for C9 in mid lane, Fudge going back to top lane, who I think most people would say was his better performing role from what we've seen, and their bot lane, of Berserker and Sven, was going to be an upgrade over Berserker plus, who was it, Winsome or Isles. So on paper, I think, the upgrades are good for C9, but, obviously when you have a big shakeup in your roster and two players who are role swapping, it's going to be a rough start early on, but it's pretty clear that the C9 roster individually has a very, very high ceiling. So this definitely feels like a team that's going to be a bit slow out of the gate, and it'll sort of take a bit of time to sort of ramp up and look very good, maybe towards the end of the regular season, beginning of playoffs type thing.
So I actually would have had them second if it wasn't for the Berserker thing. I think Berserker was like this player that we really didn't get to see shine because obviously he didn't have the greatest support in spring. And we even did see some really good things out of him regardless of that. But I thought that we were really going to see a breakout in summer, and maybe we eventually do. But the visa thing does matter, and we don't know. A lot of people are saying like it might be week 4 that he comes back. No one really knows, because who knows how long it's going to take for the visa issues to figure out, since he lost his visa and passport or whatever. But that, like, obviously that matters too. Like I mentioned earlier, how like PoE can't be scrimming with the team right now. Well, neither can Berserker, I guess, if he's stuck over there, I presume. Right? So these things kind of matter. The other thing too is there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical, like you mentioned. There's a lot of role swaps going on. There's people who haven't played the role that they're going to play this split. They haven't played competitively in like, well, half a year, whatever it's been, right? So there's a lot of question marks. So even if someone pushed them down to like 5 or 6 or maybe 7, but that's probably a little deep. But
That
even if they had
seems a
them
little
pushed
low.
down, even if they had them pushed down to the bottom half of like 6, for example, I wouldn't have been that surprised, because there's a lot of question marks. However, with that said, I still have the optimism of the other way, that I do think all this stuff is going to pan out, because I think Jensen is one of the best mids we've ever had in the league, and I don't think that one split off is going to change that. I do have a lot of faith in Sven role swapping to support, and of course I have faith in Fudge going back to top, because he was such a monster last split and got so good so fast that like that's why I have optimism in him. And so yes, I'm admitting that I'm taking the best case scenario in almost all of these scenarios, but that is my prediction. And I think by the end of the split, I actually would have them either winning or coming second. But I think I'd probably have them coming second if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, and that kind of goes like it's kind of what I was saying, that I think the ceiling of this roster is very, very high, just straight up individually. And as you said, if everything sort of does come together and they start performing well as a team, then it does feel like the sky is the limit, sort of. I will reiterate that I didn't really take the Berserker potentially not being there into consideration. I think if I did, I might drop Cloud9 one spot lower. However, I don't think I would do that, purely based on my previous point when I was talking about Golden Guardians. Just the individual firepower, regardless of who's actually playing. When you have players like Fudge, Blabber, Jensen, Sven, whether he's going to be 80 carry or support, while Berserker's gone, those are just, the players are too good to not just give them that respect in the first place. But I think it'll be an interesting question with Berserker not playing. I've seen some talk on Twitter. I guess not talk, but it's just kind of like it's what's the word? Predicting, or not rumor, just whatever. Predicting if Sven is actually going to play AD carry, and they might have Destiny play support, or if they're going to have King play AD carry and have Sven play support. So
it makes more sense for Sven to play support, right? If that's what's going to be like, you've got to be switching to a new role. Wouldn't you want him to be practicing that role so that at the end of the split, where 8 teams make playoffs, by the way, you have it, like, you know what I'm saying? It's not that big of a risk to have Sven play support. If you start the split and you're losing all your games, okay, maybe throw Sven AD and, you try Destiny out. But, like, we kind of talked about this earlier, but, like, if Destiny gets kicked off Immortals and ends up being a starter for Cloud9, like, there just doesn't seem to be a world where that happens. I mean, it could happen, but that would be really surprising, because Destiny did not have a really good split, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I would probably keep Sven's support, since that's what he's been practicing a lot lately. You want him to get more reps in that role anyways. And I mean, what can you say? Do your best. You have a really good top half of the map,
Yeah.
so you do have something to fall back on there. But we'll have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, next up, I had 100 Thieves 3. You had them 2.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to Spring Split, where 100 Thieves was running back the same exact roster. I thought that this was just naturally going to be a benefit to 100 Thieves rather than something that was going to hurt them because, the team obviously didn't play as well as they probably would have hoped at Season 11 Worlds. So consistency is just probably going to help them more than it hurts them in terms of starting off the split well. It was a little bit disappointing, them kind of looking super uncompetitive in the finals. Just getting 3-0'd really quickly. It kind of just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. It felt like with this team, including players like their bot lane and FBI and Hui, kind of just like underperforming for the majority of the split. Abadage had kind of some ups and downs. He started off poorly, looked a lot better towards the end, but had a pretty lackluster playoffs. And Closer was just kind of like this monster carry who was trying his best pretty much, but it obviously wasn't enough against the surging EG at the end of it. But it's hard to really knock down 100 Thieves too many pegs off the ladder when they were the best team in Season 11. They still finished second in Season 12 Spring, while unfortunately the finals was uncompetitive and people might not think that they are as good as they are because, this team is still pretty good. Like, don't kid yourself here. Like, Someday was a beast last split. Closer has been a beast for almost like 2.5 years now in the LCS, dating back to his time on Golden Guardians. Abadage, while sometimes a bit shaky, is still a very solid player. And FEI and Hui, while they're not the dominant bot lane they once were, they're still a great bot lane. Like I put them still in the top 3, top 4 in terms of bot lane performers in the league. So
it is hard to justify me having them at 2 after we saw that finals. It's like, could you have just not been complete shit the finals so that I could easily have them number 2 and be like, well, no problems here. Let's move along. And so I am a little Monka-esque having them number 2 after that performance, but they did get better as the split went on. Abadage really looked bad to start off, and of course he still didn't have the greatest split even towards the end. He still looked so much better than he did at the start, and so there's a lot of improvement there. Again, I'll have to echo the top jungle thing. Someday and Closer were absolute beasts, man. They had such a good split, and I would even say that split that they just had is probably up there with one of the best top jungle duos that we've ever seen in the LCS. There's obviously some notable ones that you would have to compare to maybe like Svenskar and Hanser on TSM or maybe Xmithy Impact, but definitely up there. Like they had really, really good performances. So you can't discount that. And again, the bot lane, sort of similar to Abadage. I still don't think that they turned it up as much as I would have liked them to. But I guess I still have faith. I don't know. Like, it's weird to see a bot lane have success for so long and then have one split where they struggle and then just give up on them. I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I got to give them more time to fix it. And so maybe that's why I have them number 2, I guess.
Yeah, I don't even say that they need to fix anything per se. I mean, yeah, sure, they need to fix something if they want to become the best bot lane in the league again. But I'm just not going into this split with that same expectation that they're going to be the best bot lane in the league. And I don't think that hurts them though. Even though to say that they're not going to be the best bot lane, like that doesn't hurt this team because this team still has they have a lot of great strengths.
They have other ways that they can win the game. Makes sense. I agree. What is it now? EG?
Yeah, EG. I had them 2, you had them 3, and sure, everyone's gonna be all like, "Oh, but EG won the split, and they were so great at MSI." Hey, man,
I think everyone else is on the same page as we are because everyone talks about the MSI hangover. And what I'm wondering is if there's ever gonna be a time like now it's become as of like this year and I guess last year as well, it's become expected for the MSI hangover to really have an impact on that team. I wonder if eventually there's just going to be a team that's just like, nah, we're good, and then just show up and still be number 1 and just absolutely smash. Now, I don't think that's the case because obviously there was players from EG that were pretty vocal about being burnt out and whatnot. But I'm just waiting for there to be a team that's just like, what burnout? We're fine. MSI was great and we're ready to go. And then they come right back out and they're number 1. I just don't think EG is going to be the team for that to happen with.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of brush off the MSI debuff woes when players on their team are tweeting out saying that they feel burnt out. So
Yeah.
if you were going into the summer split with the idea that, hey man, EG's different, bro, they're not gonna get hit with the debuff. I seen players on their team tweeting out that they're burnt out. So if they take a couple extra weeks off, hey, dude, cool by me. But if you started out the season 4-4, I'm not gonna be surprised. But EG I think still has that expectation that by the end of it, they are gonna be contending for Worlds and contending for the title. And I think that their performance at MSI kind of strengthened their case more than potentially worsened it in the case of Cloud9 last year. Because Cloud9, they had a really close final against Team Liquid, winning 3-2. But then when they went to MSI and looked not so great, it
Grabbers.
It brought a lot of questions into the mix at the start of summer. And I don't really feel like I have any questions about EG in terms of, this player is not that good, or I'm worried about this player's performance moving forward, or this player was declining, and there's none of those questions. It's just I'm expecting for them to hit the bit of a wall. They might start off 2-2, 3-3, 4-4, but I expect this team to be contending at the end of it. So I do have them 2. I don't have them 1, and unfortunately, I think that's just credit to TL and their players. Because we can move on to TL unless you have anything else to say about EG.
The last thing that I'm going to say is that even though I do think overall MSI was a plus as far as like the EG squad, like them making it to the semis is something I'm like, okay, well, Cloud9 wasn't able to do that last year, so it looks better on EG this year. And obviously JoJo, I did not think he had that great of a spring split. Started to pick it up as the split went on, had a really good playoff, and then a really good MSI performance. So he's kind of ramping up as the games mean more, which is a really good sign. But I can't ignore, I did not think Vulcan had a really good MSI, and so I don't think it was all perfect for EG. I don't think everyone's stock went up with the international tournament. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough.
It's hard to be like, oh, you looked bad against world class teams, so shame on you, Vulcan. But I expect a little bit more out of them still, and I think we'll probably get it. But again, I don't think we'll get it out the gate, and that's why I got them number 3. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I'll talk about TL now, and I'll just start us off by saying I think TL kind of has a very big advantage going into this split because a lot of the players on their team are known to have very positive work ethics, in the scene. I think people talk about all the time that Bjergsen and CoreJJ are probably 2 of the most hardworking players in the LCS ever since they've arrived. And when you're in a bit of a unique situation in terms of the meta and the durability update, where people are having to sort of relearn the game a little bit in terms of obviously the damage and tankiness of champions around every single champion. When you have these grinders who play a lot of games and are heavily invested in improving and are known to not take a lot of days off, and are very hard workers, to me, when you're going into a season that has a lot of question marks in terms of the meta and what is going to be good, having those grinders on your team is a huge plus for me because it makes me think that they're going to be able to sort of solve the puzzle first, because that's what they've been doing for almost their entire career. Bjergsen has been a player who, picks up champions and play styles very quickly. He was one of the early adapters of Akali in the LCS when that champion sort of got reworked. I can think of just some smaller instances where, like Fiddlesticks mid was just like a random thing that popped up when like the Fiddlesticks Reaper came in, and he was pretty much the only guy that was
People
playing
loved
Fiddlestick.
or hated it, right? If I remember right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just like weird hybrid tank Fiddlesticks mid, and Bjergsen was playing really well on it, and he's always a player that is gonna learn the new champions the fastest and the quickest, and just usually ends up performing them at quite a high level very quickly. So I kind of just have faith in the TL players that they're going to be able to figure out the meta the quickest. And that's pretty much the only reason why I gave them the number 1 spot over EG. I actually probably would have put EG ahead of Team Liquid if not for like the work ethic that I think all of these players on this team is going to have, and also to sort of right their wrongs, because this was the goddamn super team that was supposed to just smurf the league and was built for international competition. And I assume they're probably going to have a bit of a fire under their ass in terms of, okay, guys, like we need to get our shit together. We need to go to Worlds as the number 1 seed because that's what we did this thing for in the first place.
Dude, I just feel like such a TL simp.
Yeah,
when it comes to putting them number 1, like that's how I feel. And the reasons why is because like, do I think they're going to finish number one? Yeah. Do I think they are the best team right now? Yeah. That's why I have them number one. But like, not one of their players, in my opinion, played to their peak, or even really that close to their peak, if I'm being completely honest. Last
Maybe
split.
Santorin.
Yeah, I don't even think so. I still think Santorin looked better in the past. Like, don't get me wrong, he's still a great jungler, and that's the problem. That's why it's so easy to put them number one. It's like, oh, these guys that didn't play at their best still looked really good. Okay, number one. But like, it feels like if there was other teams that weren't playing at their best, I'd be like, I don't know, man. And that's kind of what I did with 100 Thieves. So like, I don't know. The thing is, I still can't help but feel like a simp for thinking TL's number one, but I can't change my mind. I do think they're the best players. Now, a couple players I want to talk about specifically, Bwipo, out that gate, absolute monster towards the end of the split. Not really even close to that. Like, he really went on a downward trajectory, and I can't forget that going into this split. So eyes for me on Bwipo. I need to see him. He's the guy that I think can improve the most from what we saw towards the end of spring split. Another guy I want to talk about, and this I want to know if like I'm getting the read on this. What's the word here? The way people look at Bjergsen, the word's not coming to me, but the way people looked at Bjergsen coming into the split was
Perception.
like perception. Yeah, was, well, you know, Bjergsen had a year off. It's going to take a while for him to get back to his best. And even though he was one of the best mids in the spring split, it still felt like everyone was like, well, Bjergsen's not GOAT material anymore, and he's not as good as he used to be. And it's like, what happened to the conversation of it will take him some time to get back to his best again? It feels like to me, and I want to know your opinion on this, it feels like people went from it'll give him some time to just, well, Bjergsen's not good anymore. And I'm like, what the fuck happened?
I mean, I thought he was the best mid laner in the LCS last split.
So did I, but it felt like, so you didn't get that feel from the from the community that people had kind of given up on Bjergsen as being GOAT material?
I mean, I don't know about giving up, but I heard the noise about, him just not being as good as he once was, and
yeah,
I'm kind of on your side of things about like, hey man, it's just been one split, let's see
like,
this next one.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with this. It's like, I think everyone's saying Bjergsen wasn't at his best. It's like, well, yeah, that's what we said in January we should expect. And it's like, once we got what we expected, people were disappointed, or at least that's the vibes I got. And I was like, why are we disappointed with Bjergsen not being Bjergsen anymore? He's been back for 3 months, But anyways, that was just the perception I got. And so I guess I'm waiting to see a full year, because I would expect him to start to look like himself. If he's going to, I would expect it to be after a full year, right? Towards the end of summer is where I expect it to happen. If it happens, I'll be like, oh yeah, here we go. And if it doesn't happen, I'll be like, damn, we didn't get the Bjergsen back that we wanted. It just feels like the jury's made up their mind a little too early on a player that I thought the community was all in favor of. Hey, let's give him some time to get back to GOAT Bjergsen. That's where I look at this anyway. But yeah, still number one. I expect them to be number one at the end and at the start. But I expected that in spring as well. And that didn't happen, so we'll have to wait and see. Anything that you want to go on about? Anything that we missed, or how about end of the split predictions? Is there anything that you think will change at the end of the split that you don't have right now in your power rankings?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is I probably expect Cloud9 to be higher than 4. I know we both have them at 4, but kind of like you said, we sort of seem to be on the side of, things are going to work out. This team does have a lot of individual star power, and even though it might take Berserker a couple of weeks to get back over to North America, I think we're expecting to see this roster sort of figure out their stuff in the middle to the end of the summer split, and then really turn it up towards playoffs. So I would expect Cloud9 to probably be in that fighting for world spots, obviously. And who knows, depending on how good they look, could be, contender for the title. I expect title contenders to be Team Liquid, Cloud9, and Evil Geniuses. I'm not going to throw 100 Thieves in that category. While I do think they're still world's contenders and they're going to be a very solid team, it just feels like, I don't know. I just favor the other teams for some reason.
It's tough. No,
I don't know if I can really put my finger on it, but it's hard to go wrong with TL's roster. EG are the former champs who, are really like riding a big high right now, and Cloud9 is just, they're a perennial threat.
I'm
So,
gonna say something that I think people might be a little upset with me for. So maybe a hot take. I don't know.
okay.
I don't have EG going to Worlds, whereas if you would have asked me like a month ago, I would have said yes. But the more I've
Hmm.
thought about it, the more I actually think that I still do think all of those teams are going to be incredibly close, like the top four. And what does happen sometimes is that MSI hangover goes for a long time. And sometimes you can't necessarily recover. If you look back to C9 when they were absolute monsters, was 2020, right? 2020 spring, that was where they went like 17-1 in spring and they
Yeah.
won. And then MSI didn't even happen. And then they just came out in summer and were kind of toast.
That was even weirder because they came out in summer and started the first half 9-0, and then they
Yeah.
ended
And
they
it's
went
almost like they
4 and
lost their
5.
legs in a marathon.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's such like a cheesy way out to pick a team, but you got to pick something. And like I look at these teams, and I really do think all of them are quite good. And so I guess if I had to pick one, I guess I'm going to pick EG. And it isn't for anything else other than that MSI hangover can last quite a long time. And I guess it worries me when I see players tweeting out that like they're tired. And again, I don't blame them, but that does have an impact on how you play. If you're burnt out, who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe they come back and maybe they're just on fire. I would love to see it. I think NA fans in general want EG to go back to Worlds. I mean, I fucking do, but I just unfortunately don't think it's
Go
going to happen.
back. They never made it before.
We'll go back to international play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing different is I guess I have TL at the end of the split, TL, C9, 100, EG in that order, and then the rest I think is all the same or similar, at least close. So,
Yeah, it feels like people have this idea that TSM is like, I think people are still with the mindset of like there's still the top 5 and the bottom 5, and like TSM
we'll
is
get to that.
they're just automatically back in the top 5. It's like kind of like we said when we were talking about TSM, like we'll see it we'll see it when or what the fuck am I trying to say?
Wait till we
We'll
see
believe
it.
We'll believe it when we see it.
Yeah.
Like
We'll get to that because we'll get to the Parth takes, and Parth has. Yeah, we'll get to that in I don't know, a little bit.
Yeah.
Before we do, let's do the 90 50 10. We did so. Before we do them, I do want to remind people of. So at the start of Spring Split, we did 90 50 10, basically being like I'm 90% sure this is going to happen, 50% sure that's going to happen, and 10% this is going to happen. J&T and I. So I'll just name them out. I had 90% chance that TL wins a split. I had 50% chance that EG goes to Worlds. And I had 10% chance that C9 reaches their goals. If people will remember, that was C9's goals were to win spring and summer, if I remember right, and then make it to semis at Worlds with LS. That's the funniest one to look back on because while, yeah, they didn't reach their goals, I didn't predict that. I did not see that. There was not a 10% chance in my mind that they would fire their coach or like LS would be fired by week 4 or whatever it was, or week 2 or whatever it was.
And they'd kick their MVP winning top laner.
Yeah, like this is not the path that 10% is what I had in mind. No, not at all. J&T had TL will win the split, so spring split. So he missed out on that one. But J&T had 50% chance that TSM will finish outside of top 6, which people look back and they're like, well, yeah, that wasn't that easy of a prediction. And I remember giving him a little bit of pushback on that because I watched the VOD, so I remember saying, like, I don't think it's the craziest thing, but I remember saying that I thought it was a lower percent chance, like a 20 or 30 or something like that. So I got to give J&T credit there. Got to give him credit there. Got to, I don't know, call out the dubs, I guess. And then got to take the L's as well. He said Fudge would be the MVP as his 10% chance. Mind you, 10% chance.
Yeah.
But didn't happen. So that's what those were. Anything to say on any of that, or should we just get into our this split ones?
I'm going to give myself 10% of a point because Cloud9 players still won MVP, so.
Sure. Okay. Copium for J&T.
Yep.
So the thing is, though, even though we did it last split, it wasn't necessarily meant for that last split. So I'm going to have one that's similar. I'm just going to name all 3 of mine, and then you name all 3 of yours. Is that cool?
Okay.
So 90% chance. Jensen is top 3 All-Pro. I have a lot of confidence in Jensen coming back.
Yeah, that feels
and being an
kind
absolute
of obvious.
monster. obviously there are some mid laners that, have been good in the past, like Abadage and Bjergsen and Jojo. So there is a world where he doesn't make it. I have confidence that he does, and so 90% chance that he's making the top 3 All-Pro. 50% chance I actually have the same one. And I swear to God, guys, I made these before going to look at the old VOD, and I put down EG Goes to Worlds as 50%, and then I look back at the old VODs, and it's the same one, that 50% EG Goes to Worlds. Obviously, in my power rankings or whatever thing, I ended up saying no, I don't think they're going to go, but I am very, very much on the fence there. But I added to it, because I kind of cherry-picked from the other one, I added another 50, and this goes back to the Golden Guardians thing that we talked about. 50% chance that Leader is playing in the mid lane for Golden Guardians by the end of the split. I think that there's a good chance they want to get Ole a green card. Olive has not been that great, and I do think that they see some room for improvement in the mid lane, and I think that's why they went after an import for an academy spot.
I see.
So 50% chance there, and then 10% chance that TSM keeps all their players and staff.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
There's a theme here that's been going on since, I don't know, when did that theme start? When did TSM just start dumping or losing everyone? Since Bjergsen in September, October?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's been happening, so that's my 10% there. Anything you want to pick apart there, J&T?
No, I I know the 10% ones are usually save for, more of the out there ones, but I think TSM's obviously going to get rid of people, so you kind of just...
So you think that's higher than 10%?
Oh, you said that TSM keeps all of their players and coaching staff.
Coaching staff, yeah.
That's like 0.01% chance that happens.
So
it's not going to happen. Yeah, like they're not going to keep everybody. Like shit's going down.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wait and see.
Okay. Well, mine...
yeah, go ahead and name yours off.
So 90% that Shenyi gets benched again.
Okay.
Because, we talked about this. They brought in this guy, Mia, who formerly played in the LCK and the LCK Challenger League. And they openly said that, that he's going to be competing for the starting spot. So if, things aren't going well on TSM, it feels like Shenyi's probably going to be the first one to get subbed out.
Okay, I like it.
So yeah, Shenyi gets benched again. 50% that another in-season trade happens. And I say that because in the middle of Season 11 summer, we saw a little swap that sent Licorice to FlyQuest. Sorry, Licorice was sent from FlyQuest to Golden Guardians, and it actually, really benefited both teams, to where both teams kind of played a little bit better when FlyQuest got rid of Licorice and then Golden Guardians added him in. So I don't know, with Worlds being on the line and everything, and especially there being 8 teams in playoffs, I assume that a lot of experimentation is going to happen for these teams who, halfway through the season might think, hey, we need a drastic change to really, turn our season around here. So I think that, especially, additionally with a lot of academy players, we've seen a lot of pretty good academy players being kept on top LCS teams. We know that Cloud9 has always had a very strong challenger team. Teams like Team Liquid have a lot of good players in academy, like Ayla and Armeo. So I think that you can have these other top LCS teams that could be selling some of their academy players to bottom tier LCS teams to start if they feel like they need to make some push. So 50% of trade happens, and then 10% the TL roster blows up at the end of Season 12.
Ooh.
And
I like that
I say blow up. What I mean by that is they get rid of at least 3 players on their roster, or change 3 players.
Oh, okay. Nice little bold prediction there. So I want to go back because I have some questions on the first 2 as well. What was the first one again? Once you say it,
Shenyi gets benched again.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I wanted to ask you: is there a particular reason he's benched? Do you think it's more like because there was rumors that he was kind of toxic or something with tactical? And I mean, they haven't been clear whatsoever with what really happened. They kind of came out later and said, actually, Shenyi wasn't a bad guy, and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't Sneaker's fault. Yeah, they've been hella, like, I can't trust anything they say. But anyways, do you think it would be something toxicity related or gameplay related? Do you think Mia would just be bitter?
Yeah, I think it's probably just more gameplay related. Like, if TSM starts to split off and they're 2-4 or 2-5 and they're struggling. I just think that, unfortunately, Shenyi's probably going to be the first one to get switched out because they brought in this guy specifically to battle Shenyi for the
Yeah,
starting spot.
fair.
So
That's fair enough. Okay, and what was the second one? What was the 50% again?
that trade happens.
Yeah, any trades in mind?
I don't know. I'm more thinking of players that might be on the move than trades. In the case of Cloud9, they obviously have a really good academy roster, and either King or Destiny is going to see some LCS time with Berserker being out. So maybe one of those two players plays well, or even a player like Darshan, who's been a very strong academy player, who presumably would be somewhere around the bottom to mid tier LCS level right now with top laners. I mean,
Okay.
I think Darshan could probably be a competent player in the LCS. You got people on Team Liquid like Ayla and Armeo who, from when they've been subbed in and playing games in the LCS, have looked pretty good for the most part. I mean, Armeo, he's kind of like TL super sub that came in when Santorin was, he had his migraine issues in season 11 and season 12. No, did he have any this past split? I don't remember. I thought he might have played one game, but I don't know. I just think that something will happen.
Okay. All right. And then what was the 10% one again?
The TL roster blows up.
Oh, right. Yeah. I don't have any follow-ups on that, but I like the spicy 10% prediction.
Yeah, that kind of just comes off the back of like if TL doesn't make Worlds, obviously they're gonna blow up. But I see it's more likely that maybe they go to Worlds and they fail to make it out of groups, going like 2-4 or 1-5, and who knows, maybe they get in a hard group. Maybe they're not going as NA's number 1 seed, so they just naturally have a more difficult group if they're going to be like a pool 3 team or something, or have to go through play-ins. So I
That
don't know.
roster's so expensive though. You have
Exactly.
to imagine. So like if things don't work out, you better be damn sure you're going to have success if you only get rid of one player, for
Exactly.
example. So I don't mind the look if they're blowing up it's 3 guys or more or whatever it is.
And
I think
NA,
it's-
for whatever reason, just it feels like there's a 1 year, expiry date on the majority
Yeah.
of rosters that all these top teams bring together. There's been a few outliers that have they've kept the team together. 100 Thieves, they're going into their 4th split now of having the same roster. I can't think of a whole lot of like TSM with their like OG season 6-7 roster. Like that roster was together for pretty much 2 years. The OG Cloud9 roster was together for 2 years. But outside of those ones, there's not really a lot of long-standing rosters in the LCS that stick together.
Things do change a lot.
Even on successful teams, we saw with Team Liquid when they sort of kind of revamped the whole team, brought Doublelift in. Like Ole and Pobelter were the players on that team before they brought in Jensen and CoreJJ, and that team won a split and went to Worlds. They won both splits, spring and summer, went to Worlds, went 3-3 at Worlds. Unfortunately, didn't make it out, but they got rid of 2 of their pretty decent players on their team for big upgrades in Jensen and CoreJJ. So I just think that unless TL goes to Worlds, makes semis or makes finals or something like that, I think it's probably more likely that one player at the least, gets switched out than they keep the roster together.
Interesting stuff. Okay, well, we'll wait and see if that happens. Let's move on to the Parth takes now. I don't know about you, but I've been loving Parth's Twitter for the last. I wish he would do this every split. To be honest, I'm just gonna be honest. A lot of stuff I just think is just wrong. But let's get into it. Let's go. I picked out 3. I don't know if you picked out any, but I picked out 3. The first tweet was on June 7th, and Parth's tweet was, going into summer LCS, I think this is the closest the top 5 have been. Each one of these teams needs something different to succeed, and coaching staff/org are going to play a huge role in who makes it to Worlds. And I read that and I was like, huh, I wonder who the top 5 is, which of course was one of the replies. And then he said 100 Thieves, Cloud9, EGTL, TSM. And a lot of people, myself included, probably you included, but based off of your power rankings, went, whoa, TSM.
Bro,
And
you're
look,
not on TSM anymore. You don't need to bias, bro.
here's the thing, though. I can see a world where TSM does make it to top 5. I just don't think I see a world where, if we were doing this 90-50-10 thing, I would probably give it a 5% that TSM is competitive with all 4 of those teams. I could see them making it to 5, and that I would probably give like a 30% chance. But again, I said there's a really big gap for me. There's a really big gap after those 4 teams, and there's just so much that went wrong with TSM for me to be like, well, they changed the mid laner and everything's okay now, and now they're going to be competitive with TL, EG, C9, 100 Thief. That's where I'm like, whoa, man, I don't know about that one. There's just too many problems. Huni was not that good. Spica was not that good. Tactical was not that good. It doesn't matter that you replace your mid laner when all the other roles look pretty bad. So, yeah. Now, again, we mentioned they had a lot of problems that they were dealing with, and hopefully they're not dealing with those problems anymore. That's why I give them that 30% random number, approximate number, we'll say, that they could make it to fifth. But that is a really big leap for them to make it and be competitive with those other top four. But that would be crazy. That would be a really, really interesting bounce back. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously don't know what's going on, but I find it a little bit hard to believe that these upper management issues or, issues with the team to upper management is suddenly going to just make them so much better in comparison to what they were in spring split. Because it's not like this is a team that just barely missed out on making playoffs and was making leaps and bounds, to get better at the end of spring split. That wasn't the case. Like, this team won what they won 5 games, and the games who they won were like 2 of the games were against the worst team in the league. Like, I'm sorry, it's just hard for me to put a lot of stock into TSM somehow going into the split with beaming confidence. And like I said, I don't think Maple is just going to be this game-changing player. I think that he's going to be an upgrade for the team, and I think that they'll be a better team because of Maple, but I don't think that changing out one player suddenly makes them this top 5 worthy team. And like you said, sure, they could be top 5, they could be 5 in the standings, but to compare them competitively to the other top 4 teams, I think is just kind of out of the question until we actually see it.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing more for me to add. Anything else on that tweet, or should I go to the next one?
We can go to the next one.
The next one, kind of similar, but he had Inspired, Spica, and Blabber are the best junglers in the LCS.
This
many
one's
people,
just flat
again,
out wrong.
myself included, went, hello, closer? Santorin? Not Spica? Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 other junglers that I would take before Spica. If I'm being completely honest. Look, I don't want to discount. He was an MVP, sure, but we saw a whole split of not MVP Spica, and it wasn't really close either. So that's one of those things where it goes to what you were saying, like, I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing, because there's a lot of good junglers in this league, man. I would take Blabber. I would take Inspired. I would take Closer. I would take... I'm missing... did I say Santorin? I would take Santorin.
Blabber.
Blabber. Yeah, so anyways, the list is pretty big of junglers that I would take before Spica. So for him to say 3 junglers and have Spica amongst them, that was kind of a standout for me.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like Spica is this terrible jungler who just doesn't deserve to be in, the list of the top 3 junglers. It's just, to me, it just feels like a bit disrespectful just to completely just not even include Santorin or Closer. Because Closer has been carrying his team for 2.5 years now, basically on Golden Guardians and now 100 Thieves. He's been the best player on that team since season 10, and I don't think you can dispute that Closer has not been the best, that he's been the best player on Golden Guardians / 100 Thieves while they've had that same 4 out of 5 players. And then to just not have Santorin there is just pure craziness to me, where he had such a good split on TL, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And he's been around for such a long time now on other top teams. FlyQuest, a team that probably shouldn't have gone to Worlds, but went to Worlds because of his play and how good he was. It just seems disrespectful. I don't know. I would probably put Spica 6th in terms of junglers I would take. I would take Santorin, Closer, Blabber, Inspired, and, River before I would take Spica. And, if we want to talk about Spica being 6, I think Jose Dioto and Pride Stalker are right there with him.
Yeah,
so
they're close. Yeah.
It's just, that one felt like the most outlandish one to me. And once again, like, bro, you're not on TSM anymore. The bias can stop, dude.
The thing is, I don't know. He's just giving his honest opinion. And the thing is, I will if he is right with these takes, that will be crazy. That will be pretty impressive. Next up, there was the June 13th tweet. This one is one that I agreed with, but I didn't really think about this. He said, NA needs better coaches more than they need better players. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Because obviously the focus is always about, like, my God, we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for these players. And it's like, well, maybe that wouldn't be such an issue if we had better coaches. And that's something that obviously he would know better than almost anyone else. And Empire, I think he's an analyst for EG. I don't know if he's an analyst or he's an assistant coach. He's watching Hotline League all the time. He's always in the chat. But he says, go a step further. We need good coaches who can coach new coaches to be good coaches. And I thought, well, that's also kind of interesting. It goes to show that there's not really a good way for coaches to improve in the scene. And so that the issue that North America has in developing talent goes so much further beyond than just the players. And a lot of people will look at that and say that's obvious. To me, it's something that hadn't really occurred to me, but makes a lot of sense when I read out the tweet. And so that was one that I actually really liked.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about, some of the best teams, in the LCS, kind of all time, you really got to look to coaching in terms of how much of a benefit that was to transform a team who maybe wasn't very good or wasn't at the top and then brought them to the top. There's a couple one that sticks out. Zix back on the days with CLG when they did that whole run to MSI and they won season 5 summer, then won season 6 spring, and like I said, had that really great MSI run. Zix was like a really big talking point in terms of that team and why they were so successful. And Cloud9, when they brought in Reaper at the season 6 summer to sort of revamp the whole team, when they brought back Meteos and they got Impact, and then Cloud9 just kind of became perennial contenders for the title and at international events after they'd kind of fallen off from the OG Cloud9 roster and had some, different rosters in between then. Cloud9 from season 6 onwards has just been unanimously considered as the best international performing team in North America. And, it took them a while, but has finally got back to winning some championships. And now Reaper moving over to 100 Thieves. Like 100 Thieves just went to Worlds and they won their first split with him being the coach. And it feels like coaching is just in general kind of underrated in the esports scene, especially when it comes to League. Well, I'll use a recent example, Peter Dunn. Peter Dunn's been great for EG. I don't think anybody was expecting Danny and JoJo to play at the level that they've been playing, ever since they've been introduced into the LCS. And, Peter Dunn's a pretty outspoken guy about how much he believed in these players before anyone else believed in them. And he's obviously, bringing a lot of positive things to EG. So it just feels like good coaching, hopefully, is going to be sort of the key to make NA better. Because in previous cases that we've seen with great coaches coming to good teams and making them great, I think we have like a solid number of examples that we've seen to sort of back that claim up.
Yeah, and something because this was brought up on Hotline League, the discussion about this tweet in particular, and one of the other things he mentioned on the show was that like it's not just coaches at the top level, like it's coaches at all level that like there needs to be a way to teach coaches how to coach. He said like basically at obviously LCS and then amateur or academy and then amateur and even like collegiate, like there's a need for better coaches at all of the levels, and that's where like it's difficult to find coaches when people aren't getting better coaching at even the lower levels. It's like the same kind of path to the LCS is like you got to start somewhere, and there's just not enough coaches, I guess, that have that kind of experience to push to be an LCS coach, and then you find yourself lacking for LCS coaches. So just a point that he brought up that I thought was really interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Quick news?
Yep, we got a couple quick news things, just 2 of them. First one. The LCS Summer Finals are going to be in Chicago on September 10th to 11th.
Which is really interesting because I remember thinking, or I think when they announced Worlds was happening in North America, I remember being like, fuck Chicago, don't go to Chicago, because like you obviously have to go to New York, you have to go to LA, and so my thoughts were it was going to be between Toronto and Chicago. And so even though I love Chicago as a city, I remember being like, fuck Chicago, don't go there. So that and fortunately, Toronto has that Canada buff, if you will, because they have to go over into Canada as well. And I feel like that's why Toronto ended up getting one of the places or one of the whatevers for the spots for Worlds. But then I'm like, Chicago's a huge market and they're kind of just not getting anything for Worlds. Well, they kind of made up for it, I guess, with LCS finals, and I feel like they probably had that planned when they were making the decision as to what places to go for Worlds. It's like, well, if we don't go to Worlds in Chicago, at least we can do a summer finals there, which is pretty beast.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's at the United Center.
It is.
Okay.
Where the Bulls play and the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, then.
So, yeah, nothing more. Last, FlyQuest. Damn, man. The CEO is stepping down. Trisha, I think Sugita, I think is her last name. I might be getting that wrong, but it's like something X Bear is her name.
Megumi or something?
have it here somewhere. Megumi X Bear. Yeah. She is an amazing CEO. I think most people would agree that FlyQuest is not FlyQuest without her. And when the news first broke, I went full copium mode, and I was like, you know what? It's totally fine because she obviously laid the groundwork for what is a successful org, and they can continue on with what she created. Like people get people at FlyQuest understand what FlyQuest wants, or just LCS fans want, and they can continue that. But Travis brought up a good point on Hotline League tonight that like it's hard to fake that. Like it's hard to bring in someone else and to just copy and paste that like genuine attitude, I guess, that she has towards just like making the world a better place. Like it's hard to fake that. And so I do actually worry quite a bit. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, maybe I was just full copium mode when I first heard the news, because as I thought about it more, I was like, those are big shoes to fill, man. And the one thing that I was bringing up is like, this is the first time we've seen an LCS org have a good fan base without either winning a championship or having organizations or having the org play in other esports titles, like 100 Thieves with like, you know, they had a CS:GO team. I don't know if they still do, but obviously Valorant and obviously Call of Duty is a big one for 100 Thieves. So like there's a big fan base there. FlyQuest is pretty much like just LCS. They might have a couple of other esports titles. I guess I'm not totally sure about that, but mostly LCS focused, and managed to grow a really respectable brand. Not even with winning. That's we don't see that, and so I think that basically I really think FlyQuest really lost a really big piece to their brand, and I hope for the God that they can carry it on, because obviously, as J&T knows, I really like FlyQuest and I really love what they do, and I'm a little bit fearful that they might lose some of that whatever it is that they had with her running show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'll be kind of interesting to see who they would get as her replacement, and I think it would be probably a good indication to kind of judge the replacement in terms of like their credentials and if they have the same sort of interests as her in terms of like the charitable work that FlyQuest has been doing with like their C Quest, B Quest, Tree Quest, and everything like that. So if they brought in another CEO who has these, you know, the same interest and concerns for these environmental causes, I would assume that they would then go ahead and continue pretty much everything that they've been doing already. So I think it'll probably be pretty telling with kind of the direction that they're going to be going in with whom they replace as CEO. And I would hope for their case that they would continue to do the charitable work that they are doing, because like you said, it's pretty difficult to create a fan base in the LCS when, you know, winning is the biggest draw, obviously, when you're not winning and you don't have other successful teams in different other esports and leagues and whatnot. So, you know, I hope they keep doing what they're doing, but it'll probably all depend on who takes the reins.
I don't think I think most people think they're going to continue to try to do what they do now. The biggest worry for me is that it's hard to replicate that if that's not your just genuine attitude of like life. Like
exactly, that's what I mean. That it'll be dependent on who they get.
Her persona was the brand, right? And that's the problem, is that that's really difficult to replicate or just replace in altogether. So that's a really big problem. One other good point that Travis brought up was that like so I was saying like I think this hurts the LCS as well, and the one point that he brought up is like a lot of times this was another team for people to care for once they weren't watching their favorite team, and I look at that as like, yeah, that would keep people watching. Was like, now you have a second favorite team, which was often FlyQuest for a lot of people, and so you hope that they don't lose that either, because if they aren't able to, I don't even want to say recreate, but just continue the brand that she's laid out for them, I think that'll hurt the league as well as FlyQuest. But yeah, really big blow. I don't know what she plans on doing. I don't know if she announced that, but was pretty disappointed. But what can you say? It happens.
Shit happens.
Oh, before we close up the show, I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the hype video? A lot of people are pretty excited with it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. It was just the OG LCS players reacting to plays.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of expecting
so you weren't
more.
Too hyped for it?
I was kind of. Okay. I feel like all the hype I saw on social media was like hyping me up too much, like kind of underperformed based on my expectations. But I thought it was good. Like it was just cool seeing all the OG faces of players.
I will say, like, I think it's like a super easy way out to be like, hey, let's just get all the players and just hit on that nostalgia that, like, it's like an easy way out, but also, I don't care. I really liked it. So, like, I
Hey,
like
Voyboy,
seeing
dude, he's back.
Yeah, I know. I'm a big Voyboy fan. I
And
like
then
seeing
he like
him.
he was on Double have tweeted out a picture of him
Yeah, that was
with
probably
him.
the day that they were
Probably.
recording or filming or whatever it was. I would have to imagine. Yeah, no, J&T knows that I'm a big fan of Voyboy. I
But
was happy
everyone
to
is.
see him.
Who isn't?
Yeah, true. Good point.
All the
Good point.
Henshin fans aren't.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I guess I shouldn't ask who isn't. Yeah, Shinshin fans. But okay, yeah, I guess I'll say it. Do Shinshin fans matter?
Dude, fuck a Shinshin.
Yeah. Like I don't care what Shinshin fans think. Anyway. All right, that's been it for this episode. LCS Summer starting really soon this weekend, Saturday. Man, I'm gonna be away, but you best bet I'm gonna be catching up on those games. Dude, I've been waiting for summer. I always like spring and I always like MSI, but I love summer. Like summer is my thing, so I'm really excited for it. Because I think it just gives the hype for Worlds. Worlds is the best thing, and I think summer does the best job of prepping us for Worlds. So
Except for
I'm gonna really enjoy
8-team
that.
playoff. Puke.
Whatever. I don't care. I think I honestly, even though I think a lot of people hate the 8-team playoff, I think one of the reasons for it is the MSI hangover. Because what if, wasn't there a time that C9 ended up like, this is like way back in the day, and they made a big run or something?
I don't really know.
The C9 Miracle run, was that after winning Spring?
No, like when they
MSI
had
might not
high
even have
jungle.
existed,
When they had
actually.
high jungle.
Yeah, what happened
No,
then?
they came second in spring, and then
Oh,
they were just
okay.
poo-poo at the start of summer.
Never mind then. Never mind. Anyways, enjoy the weekend, guys. Yeah, we still apologize for not having live shows. I feel like a broken record. We are still working on it. We're gonna try again next week. We kind of promised for this one. Whoops.
You've been baited. You got you baited.
I just blame
got
J&T.
baited.
Everything will be fine.
Yeah, whatever. You can ream me out if you want to in the comments.
Yeah.
I'll fucking
if
come
you guys
at
enjoyed the episode, they are going to come out. If you're new to the channel, we come out with episodes every week, and we're going to continue to do that. Obviously, we just didn't do one last week because there was nothing happening. But now with summer starting up again, you can expect an episode every Monday night. We'll go live whenever we can start to go live again, and then the episodes usually come out Tuesday morning. So hit the subscribe button, and they will pop up in your feed, and that also helps us out quite a bit. Anything else, J&T?
No.
Okay. We'll see you guys next week. Enjoy Summer Split. This has been episode 88 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.